done. I'm talking regular season and conference championship game, not at the end of the year, by the way. I should have made that clear. But who would it be? That will be the only undefeated team, if there is one, heading in to the college football championship weekend. Clemson is the one that I agree with Paul because of their schedule, the winner of Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah. I will make my pick. See, Clemson and Syracuse could very much head in opposite directions here. And it's not because Syracuse has not improved. Syracuse was equally lucky and unlucky on the two sides of the coin here and the way their schedule fell. In that the 6 teams that they definitely matched up well with were the first 6 teams that they played. And then the next 6 teams for Syracuse are Clemson, Notre Dame, Pitt, Miami. Not Miami. Hold on, I got it right here. Come on, don't screw with me here. Clemson, Notre Dame, Pitt, FSU, Wake, and then Boston College, who they should beat at the end of the year.
They could maybe go 2-4 with that. If they go better than that, that's going to be a hell of a run. Clint Moses says UCLA. I bet not many people do, but that's good to hear from him. Steve says, I still think Alabama makes it to the championship game, but that wasn't the question, but appreciate the opinion. Yeah. Here's one from Roger. I don't think anybody does before they get to the college championship or the college football playoff.
Well, here I'll make my point for Clemson. If they get through Syracuse this week, then they have Notre Dame, who is 3-3. They have Louisville, who is contemplating making a coaching change. They have Miami, who we've already seen be exposed by most everybody they've played, even the games that they've won. And then they have South Carolina, who is, a 6-6, 7-5 team that they've beaten like 100 years in a row. So, I don't see them losing. And then if they do that, plus if they win 2 more games in the ACC, if they win Syracuse and Louisville, no matter what happens with Miami, they're playing in the ACC title game, and that's probably going to be North Carolina, who has really surprised me this year. And North Carolina can score, but they can't stop anybody, and I don't know if they can get in front of Will Shipley alone enough, because that dude can go.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. I'm trying to think of who he reminds me of as a running back, and I haven't been able to put my finger on that. Carl Page, he mentioned 4 teams that are still the ones who will come away from the Big 12 championship. He said Big 12 champ is either TCU, Oklahoma State, K-State, or Texas. That's not a bad foursome. You're taking 40% of the conference,
third of the league, yeah.
Yeah, so there's that.
That's fair. Yeah.
Steve Sexton, by the way, said to us, Bama will be a different team the rest of the season. I don't see that. I'm not saying that they won't tweak some things, correct some things, but I would have thought we'd seen a lot different. And giving up 52 points, the most they've allowed since 1907, yeah, maybe they can. And it's not, they could have won that game, but then that's the same thing. They could have lost the game to Texas. So those things eventually add up and eventually come around to even out pretty well.
There hadn't even been a world war yet.
In 1907.
When they last gave up that many points.
Alabama's schedule, the last 3 games are tough from Paxton.
At this point, I'm not banking on Bama. I'm not as down on them as everybody else is. I do think, we had the question yesterday, Saban lost his touch. I think it's possible for them to have a down year, which is still historic for basically 85% of college football, and not be falling apart at the seams. I don't think that there's an unfixable leak just because they're having a down year that suddenly Saban lost his touch and he doesn't know how to defend offenses anymore. And there's been a little bit too much of that overreaction. There's been about 2 years at least of just wishful thinking when it comes to Saban. So I guess if he retires 3 years from now, somebody who's been talking about it for the last 2 years, the state told you, there's a lot of that going on. There's no way he loves it as much anymore. He's got to retire soon, and NIL's ruining. There's all these things that people are trying to poke holes in, and I guess when they do lose a game, there's see. But do we realize the game they just lost? What was the final score?
Yeah.
When was it decided and where was it? This isn't just losing to Tennessee by 3 touchdowns in Tuscaloosa, mind you. This is maybe the best Tennessee team in 30 years.
Well,
versus
at 20, but
20 something years. Yeah, you're right. 98. Sorry, but in over 20 years versus an Alabama team that might not be the best of the multiple national championship squads they've had over the last 20 years. So I'm with people on
doubting Bama a bit and being a little bit down on them, but I am by no means completely wiping them out of the conversation.
I'm brought to the point that I think they're going to lose again, which would take them probably out of the SEC title game.
Yeah.
At 10, well, maybe it wouldn't.
Potentially.
But potentially.
Yeah.
But I think they could lose again because there's some bad matchups, particularly with Ole Miss and their offense for Bama down the line. That doesn't mean that like 10-2, you should be walking around going, that's it. He forgot football.
See, but are you thinking that because you think Ole Miss is throwing it around? Because that's not what they're really doing anymore.
I just think that Alabama's defense isn't as good as it's been.
Yeah,
and Ole Miss can
Will Anderson
run the ball really well.
And
Ole Miss is a running team at this point.
They had 3 100-yard running backs, 300-yard runners in that game they won this past weekend, and Zach Evans was one of them.
Well, they got Zach Evans, and they also went and got the running back from SMU, Ulysses Bentley the fourth. And I remember at the time, everybody's like, why would Ulysses Bentley go there? And it's like, turns out because Lane Kiffin wants to run the freaking football this season. Yeah.
Jackson Dart can run the ball. Jenkins, the freshman, is really good. I mean, so they've got all these things. Also, the other matchup they haven't played yet, Bama hasn't, is Mississippi State. And again, that's a team that's going to be, big on offense if they're going well. So, yeah, that's why I just think that they'll lose. I think they'll lose one of the games to a school from Mississippi.
But one of the parts of all this is, there's going to end up being, what if these 8 teams end up undefeated? Eventually, again, math takes over, and eventually in conferences, Michigan, Ohio State, if that happens, or like Michigan just eliminated Penn State, not eliminated them, but that's another unbeaten team out the window. From Nohami, Nomaahe, I hope I said that right. If I didn't, I'm sorry. Or Nomahai. The thing that surprises me about Bama, and I agree with you 100%, they look like the most poorly coached and undisciplined team this year since the Shula years. The penalties that wreaked havoc against them against Texas, and they had a bunch, and a lot of them were lining up off sides. And Will Anderson was like 2 or 3 times. I get it. He's trying to get to the quarterback or be disruptive, but they are slicing themselves with razor blade cuts.
Oh, they are, yeah.
And I mean, it cost them the pass interference call at the end of the game on the pick that was deflected, and they ran it back. If you look back, I was like, okay, wait a minute. Yeah, you sometimes can see that play go. We could argue about that all day, but the offsides, the false starts, they're on the road. I get that too. But, man, they are nickeling and diming themselves. 17 penalties is disastrous.
Yeah, but that's anybody, And so, where were they? They were with a chance at a kick at the end of the game,
absolutely.
And like that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I get the criticism. I get that they're showing some holes in the ship, so to speak. But I don't think that they're unpluggable. I don't think that we're, if we go see them, commit 15 penalties the next time out, then, yeah, I think that you got to have a really hard look in the mirror. But I'm just not going crazy over them losing this Tennessee game, even though it was in very ugly fashion. I would anticipate them actually bouncing back pretty strongly to all this. That's what you would hope at least. But then again, we cover a team that we've been thinking that for like 3 weeks now, and that's not happening. So, we'll see with Bama. Ultimately, great win by Tennessee. Like, that's the bottom line, is that was a terrific win by Tennessee more than it was a bad Bama loss.
Don't you guys agree that Tennessee beating Bama, and I really enjoy Nick Saban. I admire him and everything, but don't you think that was good for college football? Yeah. Alabama fans, I understand. But I think that a little bit of new blood in the system is not going to hurt. And Tennessee's new blood. UCLA's new blood.
What's good for college football in the SEC is other teams in the SEC East carrying their weight, which has been a long time, other than Georgia. And Georgia, recently to the party, but for a long time that SEC East was kind of just one team was good,
Florida,
and everybody else, it was Florida, and then it was Georgia. And it could, it's nice to have, if you're an SEC fan, that Georgia and Tennessee can both be elite in the same year, and that can be good, as opposed to one team in the SEC East and 3 teams in the SEC West, or 4 teams are all good. Like, it's good to see that for that side.
By the way, Alabama's bounce back game they're at home against Mississippi State. If Rodgers and Mississippi State get going, and if we saw what they did throwing the ball with Tennessee, although different type of style, man.
Now,
and that game against Ole Miss is on the road in Oxford.
What Mark Stoops did to Mississippi State last week boggled my mind. I'm not surprised that he was able to coach it up because he's really damn good at coaching. But to make Mike Leach completely abandon the run in a game that wasn't that far apart, like, it weren't blowing him out, but they were shutting down the run so hard, Mike Leach is like, forget it. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Done.
A lot of you just